Okay, so this is how much of the blanket I've gotten done. This is how wide it is. So it has quite a bit of stitches on. And you could tell, okay, so for this particular blanket, I'm using size 8 in the round knitting needles, and I just flip back and forth when I'm knitting for in the round. Not like the hat like I did a tutorial on. And so for my blanket, I'm using the same kind of yarn in a different color, but I am actually using size 10 knitting needles. And now you can see the difference between the stitches. This is why swatches are so important, and this is why getting your yarn texture with your knitting needles takes a little work and practice is very necessary. Usually blankets and scarves, you don't really need a swatch, but sometimes to get your yarn, if you want your yarn certain specific tension and a certain weight, a certain stretch, the best thing to do is to, even for a scarf and a blanket, to do your swatches up. If you're not too sure how things are gonna turn out in that aspect, and you don't want to knit a bunch of rows, like these have probably 220 stitches. You're doing a big project with like about 220 stitches. You want to make sure that you know what the tension's going to look like, and if you're unsure, just go ahead and make those swatches. And here's a broader range of what it looks like. Okay, so this is with this blanket, the green, you can tell these are size 8 knitting needles. Now there's not, as you can see, these are size 10, these are size 8. The thickness, there's not much of a difference. However, that being said, it still shows the difference in the way the rows are looking. This is a garter stitch. And you can see the difference of just a few from a size 8 to a size 10. These ones are a little bit spread out, and these ones is how the garter stitch should look, is a little more like it bounces back. There's not as much space happening here. I mean, this bounces back too, but the stitches are a little bigger and the stitches are more consistent here. So these ones are a little more fluffier and a little bigger, and these ones are a little smaller. So if you want stitches to look like they're more combined together, go with a size 8. This is worsted weight yarn. This is acrylic. And if you want your stitches to be a little bigger and it's a little quicker to knit, then go ahead and go with a size 10. And you can use regular knitting needles. However, that being said, it's a lot easier to use in the round for bigger projects because it gives you more space and more room to add your stitches compared to straight knitting needles. And then, you just have all these stitches scrunched together and you could end up dropping them. You could stitch two together that you didn't mean to. Some of it could split. And when you're knitting in the round, all you're doing is flipping back and forth. You don't continuously stay in the round, and you do not join it. You just flip back and forth. That's all you do. So for my blanket, I want it to have a little bit of a bigger stitch to it. So as you can see, the way it stretches, it has a little more of a lace effect. Not fully, just somewhat a little lighter. Compared to the size 8 knitting needles, and it has a little more depth and thickness to it. But that would be your decision when you're a knitter and you're trying to figure out what size knitting needles to use and stuff. Everything comes all together after you're used to a certain particular yarn, certain knitting needles. it just all comes together and you just feel comfortable in what you do. Now, for blankets, I love doing a garter stitch because it goes so much quicker compared to like knitting purl. Like if you knit one row and purl the other row, my suggestion would be to have a garter edge or whatever edge you would like that doesn't fold, because when you're doing knit and purl, as you've seen on my hat, it'll curl. It'll curl. And you want to keep your edges down.